It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind of late spring day where the air smelled like fresh soil and blooming sage, and the only thing I planned to battle was a loose hinge on the west barn. But instead, I got a battle that shook the whole valley. I'd just returned from the feed store, straw hat still on my head, truck bed full of fencing panels, when I noticed something strange on the trail, cam notifications motion from the southern pasture. Not unusual for deer or stray cows, but this wasn't livestock. It was a caravan. 2 Jeeps, 1 lifted truck, and a line of kids on foot with coolers, loudspeakers, and folding tables. I pulled up the live feed, squinting against the sunlight. Teenagers, at least 20 of them, laughing, filming, trampling over the soil like it was their daddy's front yard. And then I saw him, Preston. HOA Karen's golden boy. The one who once egged my mailbox and got away with it because his mommy said it was a neighborhood prank. The same kid who blasted music at 2 a.m. for weeks and threatened to sue me for noise complaints when I revved my tractor at dawn in response. Now he was on my ranch land, setting up a party, on my grass, without permission. I drove down the trail in my Polaris and parked just shy of the hill so they wouldn't see me. When I crested the rise, it hit me Preston had spray-painted a piece of plywood and hung it between 2 T-posts, claiming the area as party zone HOA approved. Below it, no ranchers allowed. I was fuming. I marched into the center of the chaos. The bass from their Bluetooth speakers thumped like a heartbeat in my chest. Preston turned, drink in hand, and laughed when he saw me. "Hey, look who showed up," he shouted. "Don't worry, old man will clean up after." "You're trespassing," I said, steel in my voice. "Nah," he smirked. "We got permission. Mom said this land's part of the shared HOA greenbelt. She even sent a notice to the board. Something about rezoning." I stood still for a moment, trying not to let the rising fury take over. "Preston," I said slowly, "this land has been in my family since 1923. You see that creek? That's the boundary line. Every foot of soil you're standing on belongs to me. Not the HOA, not your mother. Me." He rolled his eyes. "Chill, dude. You've got acres. What's a few feet?" That's when I pulled out my phone and hit the speaker button. "Sheriff's office," came the voice on the other end. "Yeah, I've got a crowd of trespassers on my ranch. They're claiming HOA permission to throw a party on land they don't own. One of them is Karen Hastings' son." There was a pause. Then, "We're en route." 15 minutes later, the sirens started echoing down the valley. I didn't move. Neither did Preston. But Karen sure did. She showed up in her luxury SUV like she was hosting the damn Oscars, marching down the slope with that smug, puffed-up look she always wore when she thought she was winning. She clutched a clipboard, of course. Always a clipboard. "Richard," she barked, "you're overreacting. The HOA board approved a youth wellness event. These kids are our future, and your land is designated for public overflow space under Subdivision Clause 11C. "There's no such clause," I snapped. "Oh, but there is," she said, holding up a fake-looking printout. "You made that up," I said, stepping forward. "And even if you hadn't, it wouldn't matter. This isn't HOA land. You know it. Everyone knows it. But you still let your kids set up an unauthorized party on my working ranch." Then came the twist I never saw coming. A second sheriff's vehicle pulled up, bigger, bulkier, and stepping out wasn't just any deputy. It was Sheriff Darnell Hastings, Karen's ex-husband, Preston's father. He wore the uniform like iron and carried a silence heavier than any badge. The moment he saw what was going on, his face went hard. Karen's confidence cracked. Preston's smirk vanished. "Darnell," Karen started. "Don't," he said, voice cold as steel. "I told you last year the HOA has no authority beyond the subdivision line. I showed you the property maps. And I explicitly told you not to involve our son in your boundary war." "He's just being a kid," she stammered. "It's harmless fun. It's trespassing," he cut her off. "On a working ranch with livestock and restricted soil. It's vandalism. It's reckless endangerment. And worst of all, it's deliberate." The deputies fanned out. Teenagers were instructed to leave. Coolers dumped. Cables unplugged. Some kids actually apologized to me. One girl cried. Preston, red-faced, shouted that it was all his mom's idea. That she told him it was a done deal. I crossed my arms. He's not wrong. Karen tried one last time, holding up her clipboard like a shield. "You can't do this, Darnell. This isn't your jurisdiction, it's our son. Sheriff Hastings nodded to his deputy. Escort Miss Hastings to the car. We'll be pressing charges. And just like that, the fantasy collapsed. Karen stood there stunned, mouth opening and closing like a beached fish, her clipboard shaking in one hand while two deputies approached. One gently reached for her arm, and she recoiled like she'd been slapped. "You're arresting me?" she gasped, eyes wide. "For what?" "For organizing community bonding. For criminal trespass, incitement, and unlawful use of private land." Sheriff Darnell Hastings replied, his tone flat and impenetrable. "And don't try to turn this into a martyr act, Karen. You crossed the line again. But this time you dragged our son into it. And that's the part that makes me sick." Her voice cracked into a shriek. "You're doing this because you hate me. You always have." "I'm doing this," he said, now looking straight into her eyes, "because I swore to uphold the law. And because this man," he gestured to me, "has been harassed and disrespected for years by your abuse of authority, your false claims, and your obsession with control. You brought this on yourself." The other parents were arriving now, alerted by their kids or texts or social media posts. Some were shocked, others furious. One woman marched up to the deputies and shouted, "She told us this was public land. She said the HOA approved it." "It's not," I replied calmly. "This land has been surveyed, deeded, and taxed under the Buchanan Ranch name since 1923. You all got played." Karen was finally cuffed. As the deputies read her rights, her voice turned shrill, then hoarse, then small. She tried to look to Preston, but he was standing off to the side, arms crossed, his face a mix of humiliation and growing realization. When they put her in the back seat of the cruiser, I saw something I never thought I'd see from Karen Hastings. Tears. And for a split second, I almost pitied her. Almost. The rest of the teenagers helped clean up. Sheriff Hastings stayed and supervised personally. Preston didn't say much at first, just kept his eyes low, dragging coolers back to the truck and kicking away a trampled lawn chair. But as the last speaker was unplugged, he came over to me. "I didn't know," he mumbled. "I thought she handled it. She always says people like you just make stuff up to keep us from having fun." "People like me?" I raised an eyebrow. "You know, ranchers, old-timers, rule-obsessed." I took a slow breath. "Son, I'm not here to stop anyone from having fun. I'm here to protect the land I was raised on. This land isn't a stage for your mom's ego. It feeds people. It holds history. And it's not a playground unless you respect it." He nodded. I was wrong. That hit harder than any fine. Later that week, the full fallout landed like thunder. The HOA board, already fractured from Karen's previous stunts, held an emergency vote. Without Karen to intimidate them, for members admitted they'd been bullied into approving community access permits on false paperwork. One of them brought forward an entire binder of fake policies Karen had fabricated over the years, clause numbers that didn't exist, shared access, maps with scribbled boundaries, and emails she forged by copy-pasting fake headers into Gmail drafts. The board dissolved in disgrace. The HOA's nonprofit status was revoked. Their treasury, nearly $37,000, was seized and reallocated by court order toward restitution for landowners she had deceived. And as for Karen, she took a plea deal. 6 months county jail, 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and most importantly, a restraining order preventing her from contacting me, my family, or setting foot within 100 yards of my property. Her probation required her to attend restorative justice meetings, and one of the conditions was a formal written apology. It arrived weeks later. Typed. Cold. But I could still read the humiliation between the lines. "I regret the incident. I acknowledge the boundaries were never mine to determine. I accept responsibility. I kept the letter in my barn, pinned next to the photograph of my grandfather on horseback with the title to this ranch in his hand." A week later, Preston showed up at my gate again. Alone. No clipboard. No music. Just a single question. "Can I help with anything around here?" I had him clean water troughs, stack feed, and scrub out old pens. And he didn't complain once. After 2 weeks, I asked him why he kept coming back. He looked down at his hands. "Because I want to prove I'm not her." That nearly undid me. I called Sheriff Hastings that evening. "He's welcome anytime," I told him. And that's how it started. Preston worked with me all summer. Helped repaint the barn. Learned how to mend a fence properly. Even helped deliver a calf. I could tell it was healing him, somehow. giving him space away from the toxicity he'd grown up drowning in. When fall rolled in, the town council held a public forum to discuss HOA overreach in the area. I was asked to speak. So was Sheriff Hastings. And so was Preston. He stood in front of nearly 200 people, neighbors, officials, even a few reporters, and told the truth. My mom used power to control people she didn't understand. She used fear instead of respect. And I helped her without knowing better. But I've learned that land isn't just property. It's something you care for. And the people who live on it deserve better than HOA politics. It was silent for several long seconds. Then someone clapped. And then another. Then the whole room stood. Preston turned red, then smiled the most honest smile I'd ever seen. Today, the southern pasture, the same one that was once claimed by Karen's plywood Cygnus, now fenced off and restored. It's a pollinator field now, covered in wildflowers, native grasses, and buzzing bees. There's a new wooden sign just off the trail. Preston built it himself. It reads, "Respect the land. Know the line. Learn the truth." And on the back, in pencil, he wrote, "I was wrong. But I grew." That's all any of us can ask for, isn't it? So I ask you, is justice served? Or did Karen get off easy? Was it enough to heal? Or should more have been done? Let me know. Would you have forgiven her? Or slammed the gavel harder? Let the world hear what you would have done.